I was on my anime list to search for some manga to read and I couldn't find anything for a long ass time. That's why I decided to make this video so you guys don't have to waste your time searching for something to read. Specifically, I'm gonna talk about 5 most underrated ongoing mangas right now so that you guys can catch up to the latest chapters. It's gonna be spoil free, at least I'm gonna try. Before I start talking about these mangas for the next video, you guys can tell me in the comments what manga or anime should I review or just talk about. I'm gonna read or watch everything you guys will suggest in the comments down below. On the surface, the summer Hikaru died explores a common fear, and as such, it is one that is often explored in horror movies. What if a person you loved changed into something unrecognizable? Do you push them away or try to connect with the person they have become? Naturally, this fear is twisted into something more threatening in a supernatural horror format. What if they literally died and came back as something else that could potentially harm you and your family? This manga follows teenage boy Yoshiki after his best friend Hikaru mysteriously disappears and reappears. Hikaru went to the forest and he was missing for 1 week and then he reappears after that. Hikaru looks the same as ever but Yoshiki can tell that something is wrong. Following Yoshiki's confrontation with Hikaru about this, the monster that has replaced Hikaru's appearance changes and confesses its love to him. Yoshiki agrees to keep Hikaru's replacement a secret. That is the basic summary, but there are plenty of different directions this could go that you should really experience for yourself. Beyond the body of horror seems to be a theme of grief and repressed homosexuality, as well as subtext to read into. I know it's finished, but Kage no Tsuki has been published in English by Viz Media under the Shoujo Beat imprint since September 2024, and that's why I chose this manga. Last quarter is about a high school student, Mizuki Mochizuki, who is in love with British rock artist Adam Lang, but it seems that he cannot see her for who she is, as he is still grieving the death of his ex-girlfriend. Despite this, when Adam asks Mizuki over the phone to leave Tokyo with him, she agrees to meet him immediately, but as Mizuki crosses the road toward Adam, a car strikes her and she fails to reach him. 1 month later, a Mizuki lookalike is living in the abandoned mansion where Mizuki and Adam had spent 2 weeks together. While 5th grader Hotaru Shiraishi is searching for her missing cat, she runs into this other girl and learns that her memories are gone. She cannot even recall her own name. Since the girl only remembers that she wants to be reunited with Adam, Hotaru calls her Eve. Hotaru enlists the help of her friend Seiki Ayama and classmates Tetsusu Gisaki and Masaki Miura to solve the mysteries surrounding Eve. Similar to Ai's more well-known manga, Nana, Kage no Tsuki starts off with an incredible prologue, and any unsuspecting reader will not believe it to be a prologue until it hits them. It is then that the story truly begins. Trying my best not to spoil anything. Who is she? Why can't she leave the empty house with romance taking a backseat in the story? The kids take it upon themselves to uncover these mysteries and come to some sort of conclusion in this profound case. In regards to the artwork, Ai's fans or pretty much any shoujo manga fan would love it for its elaborate approach to simple things like the aesthetic features of the empty house and the expression in one's eyes. On the other hand, people not used to this style, especially when it comes to the character designs, may struggle to get used to it. All in all, Kage no Tsuki was a short, surreal story that expressed so much in such a small amount of time. What's interesting is that the mystery about the young girl was like one of those cliché, scary, tragic love stories someone would tell in an airy situation when the mood calls for it. Yet, there was nothing cliché about the story. It was a heartfelt tale about regaining a lost love through the help of some empathetic individuals. Yes, I know it's quite popular and many of you think that it is properly rated, but I disagree. This manga is still in its early days, it has like 58 chapters, but I think it is well worth the read. Story, art, and characters are excellent. The world is thought out and full of mystery. As the lore unfolds, it paints a very realistic take on superhumans, Choujin, and how they'd live alongside us, the way they would be threatened, regulated, and the hardships they would face. The story is told from the perspective of Tokyo, a pretty average introverted high schooler, and his not so average extremely intense go-getter, all-talented friend Azuma. At first, this kind of pair-up is pretty common in these kinds of stories. Still, both characters are actually way more varied and complex than their first impression. Tokyo is actually quite capable, but is crippled by his own lack of motivation paired with constantly living in the shadow of Azuma, while Azuma himself, despite his extreme talent, is actually very insecure. He clearly cares for Tokyo but fears his potential, creating quite a complex dynamic between the two. Power system is what I think will grab most people. I love it personally. There are many ways to become a Choujin. You can be born one, you can be infected or artificially made into one. Whatever the cause, their power are based on themselves, what they want to be or what worldview they have, an obsession or complex. All the abilities are very personal and reveal something about the character. Tokyo is a vulture Choujin, which is connected to a core memory from his childhood, where the other kids bullied him for acting like a vulture, always hovering around Azuma, the more lion-like, metaphorically picking his escapes. Azuma then flips this perspective, saying vultures fly higher than any other bird, which really ties into Tokyo's want to rise higher than he is and be more. The powers are more like concepts. They can be expanded and the only limit seems to be the user's own creativity, leading to every sort of power you can think of being on display, some more typical and some downright weird and surreal. There are some abilities all Choujin share that acts as a good way to balance everything. The power to raise. Choujin, after being extremely injured or having a so-called pseudo-death, can do what is called a raise, basically regenerate or come back to life, but most Choujin can only manage about 2-3 raises, which makes fights a lot more fun while still making the risk of death possible, and gives some characters with less attack focus powers a chance to shine and not be instantly killed. This manga is one of my favorite currently running manga. It takes what worked from Tokyo Ghoul and learns from its mistakes. You can tell Ishida is having a lot of fun making it and coming up with some real interesting things. I highly recommend it. The first 2 or 3 chapters are a lot goofier, but it really comes into its own after that. Perfect balance of drama and comedy. A manga that will change everything. Gachiakuta. Manga that has done the perfect introduction of characters and the atmosphere of the city. We got a teaser of the anime adaptation that is coming in 2025, and the studio that will handle the animation is Studio Bones, arguably one of the best studios out there. I will for sure make a separate video for this manga. Our story opens with the protagonist Rudo rifling through the trash to save anything that he deems useful or valuable. The world Rudo lives in is a class-based society divided between the haves, wealthy townspeople, and the have-nots, those in the slums. This stark division has come to be accepted in this world because legends state that the have-nots were originally criminals. In this world, it is easy to be cast out of society as a criminal due to the strict regulations governing every aspect of life. This would include trash. In this world, it is illegal to recycle anything deemed as trash. Rudo regularly ramages through the town's trash in search of anything useful or valuable to save from the abyss, a massive hole where anything considered trash is dumped, including people. When Rudo was little, his father was accused of murder and tossed into the abyss, after which a friend of his father's, Recto, took him in. One day, as Rudo was headed home, he ran into a mysterious figure. Upon arriving at home, he found Recto's dying body on the floor and was immediately found by the guards and charged with his foster father's death. No one would listen to Rudo as he professes his innocence and as punishment is thrown into the abyss. Upon waking up, at the bottom of the abyss he learns that he is on the surface of the planet and the world that he is always known is a floating city that dumps its waste onto this lower world. As a result of contamination and death, the trash has started coming to life in form of giant monsters that are tough to kill. Needless to say, the people on the surface of the planet aren't happy to see Rudo, a sky person. With a bit of convincing, Rudo joins a group called the Janitors in hopes of finding a way back to the flying city to get revenge on Recto's killer. The author, Kei Urana, has constructed a clear, convincing and compelling storyline with a recognizable arc of conflict, crisis and resolution. More specifically, the protagonist is falsely accused of a crime and punished for it. This creates an obstacle to finding his foster father's murderer as he finds himself on the planet's surface, which is a challenging problem that the protagonist must overcome. I highly recommend you guys to read this first out of these 5 manga I talked about. And it's still not that popular and it will become mainstream like Dan 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 when it will get the adaptation, so you can kinda gatekeep this manga. Centuria is basically Vinland Saga meets Berserk in a dark fantasy story written by an assistant to the Chainsaw Man author. Toru Uramori, the author of Centuria, has worked with Fujimoto on Chainsaw Man, so it is clear that we have great manga on our hands. We rarely get first chapters as accomplished as this, with art that is gritty, detailed and grim and a story with a clear purpose, tone and theme. Vinland Saga meets Berserk is how you sell it because it has to do with slavery and has dark fantasy elements, but it has an identity of its own and it can go in any number of directions from here. Centuria tells the story of the slave Julian who valiantly escapes captivity after living a life with nothing of value. He stows away on a slave ship but is eventually discovered, condemned to death. However, it is the kindness and dignity of his fellow slaves aboard the ship that saves his life. This first chapter covers a lot and manages this while still be coherent. The themes at play here are quite mature, dealing with the horrors of slavery and institutional persecution, but also how the spirit of human condition can be affected by such circumstances. Julian starts the chapter skeptical of others, wary of their kindness, as would be expected of someone who was sold by his mother and mistreated his entire life. However, we see him change even in the brief time we have with him. Mira, the pregnant woman, plays a pivotal role in the protagonist's transformation, herself a slave, simply looking for a better life for her child. They develop a mother-son bond. The culmination of this chapter though is quite harrowing and not for the faint of heart. The slave owners look to slaughter the slaves aboard the ship, and that's when a dark sea creature emerges from the sea, demanding a sacrifice. In terms of a plot, this might seem forced and convenient, but in the context of dark fantasy, this is a compelling hook. Julian is granted the power of 100 slaves after Mira performs a C-section on herself to save her child, then offers herself as a sacrifice to save Julian. Julian is left with something of value, the child of a woman who was the first to ever cherish him and make him feel valued. It might feel rushed and on the nose to some, but this is probably a function of wanting a chapter 1. Vinland Saga took its time with its prologue, but the story here wants to impact you from the get-go, and time will tell how it evolves from here. That is all I wanted to say about these 5 mangas, so I hope you guys really enjoyed my opinion and have a nice day, have a nice life. Oh, don't forget to subscribe.